Hello, I'm Pastor Mike, and this is our weekly encouragement called InFocus from La Center Church. Today we are going to look at the story of when the apostles were arrested and beaten, and they were suffering dishonor for the cause of Christ. And the amazing story is the apostles were arrested again. The first it was Peter and John, now it was the whole group, and they were arrested and they were being confronted over their preaching of Christ in the temple courts. And during that time, Peter was laying basically at the feet of the council, the religious leaders, the death of Christ. But then he would always say, but God raised him from the dead, and we have been witnesses of this. And he preaches that there's a need to be forgiven of your sin and to come right before God. And at this point, the council, the Sanhedrin, was livid. They were angry. They were fuming over what was being said and done, and especially because the apostles were laying the death of Christ right at their feet, which they were guilty of course. And they really wanted to kill the apostles because of that. But Gamaliel brings a level of reason to that religious leaders group, the Sanhedrin. And he basically states that, hey, if this is of God, you're going to be fighting against God. If it's of man, it'll go away by itself. And so they bring the apostles back in, they threaten them further, they beat them, and then they release them. And then the amazing statement is written that they left the presence of the council rejoicing that they were considered worthy to suffer dishonor for the name of Christ. They were worthy to suffer dishonor. They were rejoicing because of that. That statement contains two opposite ideas welded together. Luke notes that they rejoiced because they were considered worthy, and then he adds, worthy of suffering dishonor for the name of Christ, the cause of Christ. These two things don't usually go together, so let's take a little deeper look. First of all, it says they were counted worthy. That means to consider worthy to receive some sort of recognition or privilege or benefit. And it is special when we receive honor for a job that's well done. When you've worked hard and you've earned the recognition, there is honor in that recognition. And when you have your good character and is shining through and someone notices that and they honor you for your good character, that is special because you have earned it. You have received that. We rejoice when we receive that kind of recognition, when we are considered worthy. But then in an amazing twist, we see that they were rejoicing because they were considered worthy to suffer dishonor for the cause of Christ. That word dishonor means to be treated shamefully, to be mistreated, to be insulted, to be disrespected. They were rejoicing that they were considered worthy. Instead of receiving honor, they were receiving dishonor. That doesn't usually make sense. You see, the risen Christ had commanded them to boldly witness his resurrection and make disciples of all the nations, and they were on a mission. And thousands had come to Christ and were being discipled in their new faith. They had done nothing to deserve a public beating for the cause of Christ. Instead, they were healing the sick, they were casting out demons, they were making lives whole, and they were helping people to be reconciled to God. True spiritual leaders now would see this and honor that, but the Sanhedrin was all about keeping their power and covering up their complicity in the death of Christ. And the apostles were laying Jesus' death clearly at their feet. They were responsible for the death of Christ, and therefore the Sanhedrin dishonored them, treating them as criminals as they publicly beat them for their testimony of faith. So the apostles rejoiced that they were considered worthy to suffer dishonor for Jesus. They were following in the footsteps of their Savior. He had told them that this was going to come. He had warned them. He had prepared them. And now it was becoming a reality in their lives. So they rejoiced. And it reminds me of what James wrote, as he said, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you encounter various trials. For the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and the end result is spiritual maturity." So he says, rejoice when you encounter that, because the end result is spiritual maturity. So how are Christ followers today being dishonored? You may be fired for expressing your faith. Just think of the football coach in Bremerton, Washington. Your business may be sued and shut down and fined for standing up for biblically based convictions. Just ask the cake bakers who refuse to bake cakes for same-sex weddings. Just ask the florists who refuse to make flower arrangements for the same types of weddings. Just ask the pressure that is faced by the one who stands up against the insanity of allowing biological males to use female restrooms and locker rooms. John Stonestreet of the Prison Fellowship has aptly said that as believers, we need to develop a theology of getting fired. We will face persecution for standing up for our faith, for standing up for what the Bible teaches in a culture that is rejecting that same teaching. And as we do that, we will make a bigger impact for the cause of Christ. Don't shrink back from it. Stand up for what you believe, and your witness will be that much stronger. So I do hope that you will join us this week at La Center Church as we explore the prison break that we read about in Acts chapter 5. If you're not able to join us at our 9 o'clock or 10:30 service, we invite you to join us online at 10:30. I hope to see you on Sunday. Again, thank you for watching. This is Pastor Mike.